What's up, sports fans? I'm Patrick Jaguar, the Cosmic Alchemist, and welcome. So this video today is all about the December 26th, 2019 solar eclipse in Sagittarius. And real quick, this is Vedic astrological forecast. So if you hear me talk about Rahu and Ketu and you're wondering what the hell's that, and all the sign placements for the planets sound off by a sign, that's why I just like this system better. So anyway, this is going to be a big eclipse for us. This is, to sum it up just in a couple minutes, this solar eclipse is really going to shake our egos, and it's really going to turn basically our viewpoint and the way we see the world and our whole perception of the world, and even the world itself on end. The part of Sagittarius where a lot of planets will be placed for this eclipse is called Mula. So in Vedic astrology, all of the 12 signs are comprised of nakshatras, and nakshatras are 27 mini constellations that work behind the scenes of the signs. So Sun, Moon, Jupiter, and Mercury are all going to be in Mula. Mula is the nakshatra, the mini constellation of destruction. It's called the root, and this actually refers to the root of our galaxy, which is Galactic Center, but it's all about pulling things up by the roots. And when, if you pull up a plant or a small tree by the roots, you get a little hole in the ground. So, and it's all about, the empty space, and, spirituality is really all about, the empty space in the universe that that is full of infinite energy potential. So we're going to have our egos and our views of the world pulled up by the roots, and it's like when you're out pulling weeds, you pull up the weed and you shake the weed and all the dirt clumps fall off the roots and you can see the roots. So that's what we're going to go through here. It's going to happen individually and collectively, but the universe is not giving us the option to experience this or not. It's mandatory. It's going to force us to do it. And so the best you can do is just celebrate this and go with it. You can also resist it, but you're going to be crying and blubbering and screaming, and you're going to be accusing everyone around you of ruining everything for you, and everyone else is going to be the reason why everything went wrong, and your life's not perfect, and blah, 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 blah. So, most of us are going to fall somewhere in between there, because it's tough to, cleanse your ego and stop telling yourself, all of your victim stories that, you've been telling yourself your whole life. So, we're all going to fall somewhere in that spectrum of totally, embracing it or resisting this process. So, real quick, with Sagittarius and the whole significance of Sagittarius, Sagittarius is really the foremost sign of spirituality, because it's Jupiter's yang aspect, and it's the home sign of Jupiter, and Jupiter is the spiritual teacher of the cosmos. So this solar eclipse is all about spirituality and our worldview and our philosophies, and those spiritualities and philosophies and worldviews are going to be tested, and we're going to see if are these aligned with spirituality. Do they have that emptiness that allows spiritual energy to come into them and then be broadcast out into the world, or are these spiritualities and philosophies and worldviews just full of old, decaying crap that we've been carrying around. So we're going to get tested here. And so, again, with this whole thing with Galactic Center, Sagittarius is the sign that lines up with Galactic Center. And, at the center of the galaxy, we have a giant black hole. And so, if you've, watched the Discovery Channel, or, you've learned about black holes and, some science or astronomy class or another, you've heard that if you were to physically go to a black hole, you'd basically implode and be crushed and then torn apart because of the immense gravity. So, black holes have that. It's this imploded star, and they pull things in, but then they tear apart whatever comes in there. And so it's almost like a big empty space that just swallows everything. But within that void, this seeming void, this empty space, there's also infinite energy. Energy also comes out of it. It's the void, really. People in spiritual traditions since the beginning of humanity have been talking about the void. And the void is, seen as kind of the birthplace of everything in our 3D manifest universe. So, this black hole at the center of the galaxy it's just pure potential energy that anything that can manifest anything. So, and we even have this, within our own bodies and our own energy bodies. And that's, I follow Taoist meditation and Qigong and Taoist alchemy. And that's a big concept within, these Taoist internal arts is, cultivating these empty spaces in your body. You're supposed to have one on your solar plexus, right between, your heart and your navel. And, and actually you have one as an embryo. And, there's an expression, nature doesn't abide a vacuum. So, after we're born, that space gets filled in. But, a big part of, Taoist alchemy, Taoist meditation, and energy work is to basically take your body kind of back to its embryonic state, not completely, but in very specific ways. So, you're always in these Taoist arts, you're always cultivating empty space inside you. And when you have this empty space inside you, you can be receptive, you can be positive. You hear this a lot in the New Age, being positive. So, when you're positive, when you have this empty space, inspiration can come in and change your life and give you great ideas and allow you to be creative. So, the solar eclipse it's a house cleaning, but the house cleaning is all about giving us an opportunity to be more creative and to be more receptive and to be more positive, because things that are energetically, electrically, electromagnetically positively charged, they attract other particles. Like a proton, a positively charged proton attracts a negatively charged electron, or, an isotope, a molecule, an atom that's positively charged will attract electrons. So that's, when people say be positive, that's what it's all about. So I found an interesting quote here, and I wanted to just rattle this off real quick. So, I was thinking about this black hole at the center of the galaxy, and I was thinking about Paradise Lost, John Milton. So the quote is, "Into this wild abyss, the womb of nature and perhaps her grave, of neither sea nor shore nor air nor fire, but all these in their pregnant causes mixed confusedly, and thus must ever fight, unless the Almighty Maker them ordain his dark materials to create more worlds. Into this wild abyss the weary fiend stood on the brink of hell, and looked a while, pondering his voyage, for no narrow frith had he to cross." So this is all about looking into this void. this had, when Paradise Lost came out, it had this very Christian spin on it, and it was all about God and Lucifer and blah, blah, blah. Well, in the 1500s when Milton wrote this, that's what you had to do, is everything had to be Christian. Otherwise, the church was going to murder you. So whether that was Christian or Protestant or whatever, they were going to kill you. So, Milton was writing about very old wisdom and very old cosmology that was, pre-Abrahamic, pre-Judeo-Christian. But, these things had to be disguised. It's like a lot of Da Vinci and, Michelangelo's artwork. It had to be given that little bit of a Christian spin so that these people wouldn't be put to death by the Christians. So, in Paradise Lost, in this poem, Milton's talking about this void space within ourselves and within the universe where, where everything comes out of, where all manifest things come out of. So, when it says, neither sea nor shore nor air nor fire, but all these and their pregnant causes mixed, it means that from these void spaces, any type of energy can come out of them. It's full of pure potential energy that's not manifest, that hasn't turned into anything yet. So, pretty interesting. So that's what Galactic Center is. And, like I said, Sagittarius lines up with Galactic Center. So, enough about Sagittarius. The whole thing with solar eclipses is that the sun, or our ego, our soul, our self, our identity, during a solar eclipse, that self or that ego becomes obscured, becomes clouded by one of the nodes of the moon. So, either Rahu or Ketu. So, Rahu is a deceiver. Rahu creates illusions. And Ketu is basically a revealer. And it's a planet, a deity that uncovers things, that reveals things, gives us revelations. So, the solar eclipse is all about revelations. It's revelations in the world, but revelations in ourselves. So basically, we're going to have our egos eclipsed, clouded over, and, we're going to be staring right into this pure potential in the center of the galaxy, and we're going to have our egos pulled apart. And, this isn't going to be instantaneous, but it's going to be over the next year and beyond, because eclipses set the stage for the coming year. And then, really fated ones, really important ones, they set the stage for years to come, really, even decades or centuries. So, and especially 2020, 2021, those years are going to be all about just revelations and sorting through just all the lies and deception that have been in the world for our entire modern period. And to me, I consider the last 2,000 years the modern period, because the Roman Empire was trying to control the world and take over the world and, spread their mentality and, exploit the world. And we still live in the Roman world, and the Romans spread the hijacked Christian church. The Christianity we have today is nothing like, what was original. And the Romans took control over the whole thing because they saw the Christian movement or the proto-Christian movement as a threat to their empire. So they just took all the vocabulary and just put it on the Roman sun religion, and there you go. So we've been living in this Roman mindset for a long time, and it changes forms over time, and we're seeing this now, in medieval times, the church taught everyone that they were sinful and they were evil and they were unworthy and they should feel guilty and shameful. Well, that's taken a new, people don't want to go to church anymore. So now academia and science have really grabbed that torch, and even social justice and activism. And so, people who are left-wing, who are atheists, who are intellectual, they don't want to go to church anymore, but they're into all these social movements that basically teach people to feel guilty all the time and to feel shameful, especially white people, to be honest. So, and people living in a developed world, it's always teaching you're the problem, and you should be ashamed of yourself. So, this thing just morphs and takes other forms. It's not just Christianity. So I'm not picking on the left and on intellectuals and on activists or social justice warriors. I'm picking on both sides because I think Christianity, in the mainstream Christianity, fundamentalist religion, is ridiculous too. They're both ridiculous. Both sides are ridiculous. Picking a side is ridiculous. So, and that's another thing that is up for revelation, is up for a house cleaning during the solar eclipse and beyond, is this whole idea that you have to pick a side and there's only two sides. So another really cool aspect of this whole solar eclipse on the 26th of December is that it's almost right on New Year's Day. And what do I mean by New Year's Day? Astrologically and astronomically speaking, the 25th of December is New Year's Day. Even for the most, intellectual, rational, skeptical person, calendars are still based on the movement of celestial bodies, on the movement of the sun and moon. So the winter solstice is the low point of the sun from the northern hemisphere perspective. So after the summer solstice in June, the actual high point of the sun is the 24th of June, Feast of John the Baptist, all that kind of thing. And the sun starts falling south from our perspective on Earth. And the sun falls towards the equator and actually crosses the equator on the vernal equinox, on the autumn equinox, and it reaches its low point on December 21st. Then what happens is for the next 3 days, so the 22nd, 23rd, 24th of December, the sun stays at that low point. So that's why Jesus dies and is dead for 3 days before he rises again, because Jesus is the sun. So the sun is it's in the underworld for 3 days where it just sits at that low point. Then on the 25th, the sun is reborn, or the sun is born. So that's why Jesus' birthday is put at December 25th, because again, Jesus is the sun. And the sun is born on the 25th because it starts moving back north towards the equator. So the whole thing here is that it's really fated, and it's really serendipitous how this solar eclipse happens right after the winter solstice. So the year begins December 25th, and the next day, the 26th, here in the United States. In other parts of the world, this eclipse is actually going on the 25th. So right on what is effectively New Year's Day, December 25th, this eclipse is happening. So when you have an eclipse happen right on what is really New Year's Day, this eclipse is really going to set the tone for the whole year to come, for the whole 2020, and even beyond. I mean, this eclipse to me is a real milestone in time, where people are going to look back at this as a turning point, and as a sign on the road to that turning point for the whole world. So really cool. And you might be wondering, the reason why I have a headless horseman, on the title for this video. Well, Ketu in the mythology is a headless deity, and because it's headless, it has no desires, it has no face, so it has no ego, it has no self-image. Ketu wants to leave the 3D world and go to a more ultimate reality that's beyond this one. So, when you're talking about like the angel of death, or the grim reaper, or even the headless horseman, the angel of death and the grim reaper wear a hood, but instead of a skeleton in there is really just nothing, just like the headless horseman. So the headless horseman is the angel of death, or the grim reaper without the hood, because Ketu is the kind of the patron deity of, spiritual liberation, but also death, and not necessarily physical death, but just death of the ego, and death of sort of our concocted self, the self that we've created so we can fit in our families and society and relationships and the workplace. So, the whole thing about the Grim Reaper and the Angel of Death and the Headless Horseman, it's not about this supernatural spiritual being coming to kill you. It's about this force in the universe, this force within your own psyche, and kind of a supernatural being that helps you to shake all the crap off your ego and align it with your true self, with your heart's desires, and with your soul. So that's what that's all about. It's not about killing you, but it's about whittling you down to a truer self. And another thing too, you see in the New Age is, all these New Age gurus are always trying to teach you to, kill your ego and, just dismantle your ego and get the influence of your ego out of your life. Well, that's total falsehood, and that's the next generation of Abrahamic religions. That comes from Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, where you're not allowed to want anything. You're not allowed to create anything. I used to hear in Catholic school, they used to talk, total nonsense about, well, humans don't create anything, only God creates. Humans only make things. Well, we're alive here on Earth so we can create things, because in a very limited sense, we are God, but, we're avatars with kind of a God seed within us. So we're here to create things. We're born on Earth because our souls have desires and they want to experience things and they want to create things. They want to create more of themselves in the world. So, a big thing with spirituality is that you have to go through this void space and this empty space and embrace this emptiness and have all of your illusions stripped away from you, while also maintaining an individuality, while still having an ego. But that ego has to be aligned with your truest self, with your deepest soul, basically, with your heart's desires. So that's the thing I love about Odin, who is one of the gods of my ancestral tradition. He sacrificed himself to himself. He hanged on the tree of life for 9 days, and all this extra crap, all these illusions in his ego were stripped away, and he was whittled down to his truest self, and he maintained his identity, even though he was now more empty. So, we really have to get this whole thing out of us, we have to let this idea go that, the self and the ego is somehow evil or shameful. So, Ketu is a destroyer, because, Ketu destroys, your false ego, your out of balance ego. So let's get back to the astrology chart here. So, if you look at the, midway down the chart, just left of center, you see a diamond with a number 9 in it. So there's a whole pile up in there at the maximum of this solar eclipse. You've got Pluto, Saturn, you got Ketu, Jupiter, Sun, Moon, and Mercury. So, yeah, holy shit. We've got 7 planets in there, and for astrological purposes, I refer to Sun and Moon as planets, because planet comes from a Greek word for traveler, and Sun and Moon sure as shit travel across the sky from our perspective, so I call them planets. So 7 planets in Sagittarius. And when I started looking at this, some months ago, and I was seeing this, I was like, I started intuitively, I kind of had a multiple car pile up on the highway, and I was saying to myself, yeah, this is a pileup. And, you know, when you look at it, you've got Pluto's at the highest degree. Pluto's up in the lead. Pluto is at 28 degrees of Sagittarius. So, you know, the absolute galactic center point is 27 degrees of Sagittarius. And actually, as I'm making this video now, I think it's the 16th of December, Pluto is at the 27th degree. By the 26th, Pluto will be at 28 degrees, so just off galactic center, but not far. And so you get Pluto, and Pluto's the god of the underworld. Pluto shows you, you know, what you've been procrastinating on. It shows you what things that you haven't been dealing with in your own mind and in your own heart. What feelings and what thoughts and what memories and what, you know, points of view that you haven't been dealing with that you need to resolve and, you know, integrate into yourself and stop carrying around like baggage. And, you know, the god of the underworld makes you do this. And actually, you know, while I'm on the subject of the god of the underworld, it's interesting because, you know, this galactic center point is really what hell is. So hell is not, or, you know, hell or the underworld, they're not places of torture. They're actually places of healing and cleansing that people's souls go to between lives. And, you know, if they have unresolved issues, and, you know, there were things in life that they really desired but they never got to experience, or if there were just issues that were never worked out and that they're still carrying. So, you know, the underworld, or hell, which, you know, all traditions across the world have always had, it's like a little island that's within, you know, this void space. And basically, you know, your soul is like, it's pulled apart a little bit, and all of the unresolved issues, the unresolved baggage and thoughts and emotions are pulled out of it. You know, it's like if you ever read comic books, you know, back in the in the 80s and 90s, it's like there was one where Magneto pulled the adamantium out of Wolverine, and there was a really crazy graphic, and, you know, all this liquid metals coming off of Wolverine's bones. You know, the adamantium was the metal that coated his skeleton. It was actually infused into it. So, you know, Magneto, who had this electromagnetic, you know, attractive power, just pulled it all out of him. So that's a good, you know, graphic to kind of, you know, equate to this and, you know, help you wrap your head around it. So that's what hell is all about. You know, so hell was a place of cleansing and healing and feasting, you know, and, you know, maybe you'd meet the souls of your loved ones there, but it was all about just giving humans a space to cleanse themselves. You know, you could go there and torture yourself if you want, but, you know, the ruler of the underworld, you know, in the Roman and Greek tradition, which was Pluto or Hades, and then in the Norse tradition, which I really like, the goddess was actually named Hel, or Hela, you know, and the place was also called Hell. So these rulers of the underworld were very compassionate deities, and they'd allow you to do whatever you wanted to yourself, because this was like, you know, if you went there, that was your rest time between incarnations, between lives on Earth. So we've got Pluto right at galactic center point, and, you know, and so this god of the underworld is saying, you need to cleanse yourself and you need to deal with the baggage you've been carrying. And the reason that we're being forced to deal with all this baggage is so we can move into a more beautiful world that is going to be built, that we're going to move into. You know, now that the age of Pisces, the age of the haves and the have-nots, the age of shutting up and doing what you're told is finished. And we're starting Aquarius, and we're going to have a more, you know, really a more even playing field where you can, you know, you'll still have to cooperate with people, but you can be yourself, and you can be whatever self you want to be, as long as, you know, you're not hurting other people. So in order to go to a more beautiful future, we need to cleanse ourselves, and that's the big thing here. So one thing that I should mention, about this galactic center point, this black hole, this center of the galaxy, is that it's also the highest heaven. So it's not all, it's not all doom and gloom, freaky deaky, go to summer school, repeat the grade. Galactic Center Point, it's not just like this sort of portal or this gateway to the underworld. It's also highest heaven. In ancient times, people saw Galactic Center Point as it was sort of the center that divine energy radiated out of into the whole galaxy. If you talk about the Gnostics, who really were the original Christians, they saw the gods, the aeons who created, the physical world. Specifically, the two most important ones were Christos, where the word Christ comes from, Christos and Sophia. They were these two aeons who came out of there, and Sophia created and became 3D reality. And Christos was always trying to raise her consciousness and vibration, back to, a highly spiritual level. So that's a big part of what Galactic Center Point is. So, and that brings you to a whole other, very old and an advanced spiritual topic, is that heaven and hell, heaven and the underworld, highest heaven and underworld are really one and the same. It's all about what you're capable of perceiving. It's all about which one you vibrate with or which one you resonate with. So, and that's another thing too, is, this black hole it's empty space. So empty space within yourself gives rise to inspiration. You're able to be influenced by, something spiritual or positive or high vibrational that's outside of you, and it finds a place within you, and you have inspiration, you have a great creative idea. So inspiration is all about holding an empty space inside you so you can learn something, so that you're not, every time you encounter new information, you're not laughing at it and saying, well, in 1960 whatever, when I was in civics class, they taught me X, Y, and Z, and I learned such and such at Sunday school, so that can't possibly be true. That's a person who talks like that, they're totally full of extra crap, and they're incapable of being inspired or learning anything new. So, this empty space, it's like the underworld and its highest heaven all in one. And it's the energy in this universe that inspires us and allows us to raise our consciousness. So, it's a mixed bag. It's like, we can have this higher consciousness and we can move towards this higher heaven if we can cleanse ourselves. And once we do cleanse ourselves, if we're not ready for it, once we do cleanse ourselves, then we're ready to move towards it. We're ready to have happier life, more fun, more joy, more fulfillment. So it's all up to us. But so I wanted to add that too. So you got the god of the underworld at 28 degrees. You have Saturn at 26 degrees. So Saturn and Pluto are working together here. Saturn is the enforcer, the judge of the cosmos, represents our karma, represents the way we do things, doing things the right way. And, Saturn is a very exacting teacher. He's not a sadist, but makes you do things the right way and doesn't let you move forward and progress until you learn how to do things the right way. So Saturn and Pluto are rolling together. And, Pluto, the god of the underworld, is saying you need to resolve your baggage. And Saturn is like, yep, he's goddamn right. And I'm not letting you move on until you do that. You're going to keep repeating the grade till you figure it out. So this is a big eclipse. So then we have Ketu kind of in the middle of this whole thing, 14 degrees. So again, Ketu, the headless horseman, the grim reaper, and it's just going to be cutting down our egos and all the falsehood within them and the falsehood in the world too. Then we have the moon. We have Jupiter at 11 degrees. Moon at 10 degrees, Sun at 9, and Mercury at 1 degree. So again, you've got this pile up and all these planets stacked up. And Mercury is down at 1 degree. So Mercury, or Hermes, and then Odin has some, has some association to Mercury. He has association with a lot of planets, but, one of them is Mercury. So Mercury has always been the messenger of the gods, and Mercury can go on all levels, can go from the highest heaven to the deepest underworld, the deepest hell. And Mercury carries messages to everyone and talks to everyone, and nobody's below Mercury, nobody is above Mercury. Mercury's not going to kiss anyone's ass. Mercury's not going to refuse to deal with anyone. He's going to carry the messages, and he's going to speak to who he needs to speak to. And Mercury's the intellect too. So, the way I see this, Mercury being at the lowest degree has a lot of influence, because in a conjunction, the planet with the lowest degree always has a lot of influence. So I see this as basically the messenger of the gods, or the planets, has gone out and has gathered all these planets in that need to be cleansed, and has led them in, and they're all facing Pluto. Well, they're facing Pluto and Saturn, and they're saying, okay, here we go. So a lot of cleansing here. Saturn represents, like I said, karma in this life and in all lives. Karma you carry across different lives. The moon is the mind. Jupiter is our spirituality, our philosophy, our worldview, our higher consciousness, our sense of expansiveness. And the sun is the soul, it's the ego, it's the self. And, Mercury is the intellect. So all of these aspects of ourselves are going to be cleansed, because we all have falsehoods lurking within them, in our individual and a collective. So, like I said, we need to embrace this and just celebrate it, because if you resist this, if you try to say, you don't have any falsehood within yourself, you've never manipulated anyone, you've never been narcissistic, you've never been selfish, you've never been self-righteous, then this is going to be that much harder for you. And if you're in denial. So we need to just not be in denial. We need to embrace this and be willing to learn something new. Because if you think you know everything, then you can never learn anything new, and life is stagnant. And really you have no purpose to be here on Earth. So, excuse me. When you become rigid and stagnant and you refuse to change, life has a way of taking you out of here, of sending you to the next world. So, and we're definitely, we're not going into like hell on earth kind of times, but we're definitely going into times where there's going to be some amount of unrest. I don't think there are going to be riots in the streets, but people are going to flip out. People, who are living in the past, who just want the Cold War to come back, who want the days of the New Deal to come back, and the feel-good days of Ronald Reagan, and the 1950s and the Civil Rights Movement and Bill Clinton, or Barack Obama. People who want the past to come back, and they don't want to move forward into the future, and they don't want to deal with the fear and the uncertainty of the future. They're probably going to crack themselves up. You might see people keeling over because they're glued to the news, they're glued to the TV news, and they're swearing at it and getting their blood pressure up. I have people like this in my family, and they wonder why they're on blood pressure meds. So, we need to roll with this. Otherwise, it's really going to suck. So, again, to put this another way, we need to stop being self-righteous children. So, the thing I see in the United States right now is that everybody's out for revenge. Every political party, every gender, every race, every religion. It's since the beginning of the Cold War, this country and the whole Western world is like this, has been reduced to a bunch of squabbling special interest groups. and they want revenge and revolution for their group, and they don't really care, or at least they're not really thinking about how it's going to affect everyone else. So it's like they want all this government money to correct some injustice from the past instantly, right now, and they just want it, and that's the end of it. And if you want to debate this, then you're a racist, or you're a misogynist, or you're selfish, or you're whatever. So we need to cut this shit out because it's gone on too long. So, and again, there's going to be a lot of revelation through all this. Really interesting thing that just came up in the news was that, and this, I first saw this on CBS News and I almost fell out of my chair, because the story was that, the UK just had a general election, and Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, was reelected. And they actually admitted that both sides, both the Conservatives and the Labour Party, so the left-wing party, were both running misleading news stories. So, the United States, this is going to catch up in the United States. We're going to find out that both parties, both left and right, Republican and Democrat, have all been doing this. Right now in the United States, the Democratic Party, in their own minds, is still the angel party. They're angels and they would never lie to anybody. Both parties do this. Just because you play the victim doesn't mean you never manipulate or lie to people. And that's what these parties are. The Republican Party is the aggressor party, the overt aggressor party, and then the Democratic Party is the passive aggressor party. They tell a sad story and they play a victim, and they want you to feel sorry so they can get their way, and when they don't get their way, then they get aggressive. But it's much more passive aggressive. But both are very selfish and very short-sighted, and they do a lot of manipulation and they lie, and that's just the way it is. Politics is all about lying. People think because they go to college and they watch the news every day and they own a home or they're in the military that someone's going to tell them the truth because they deserve it. And it's like, no, that's total bullshit. We live in a Roman world, in a Roman system. When you go to college and you study government, they teach you, the professors proudly teach you that our laws, our legal system and our politics and our laws are based on Roman law. Well, one of the central axioms, or one of the central values in the Roman system, was let he who would be deceived be deceived. So the system isn't about going out and waking people up and giving people a fair shake and the honest truth. It's about, well, if someone knows what's going on, then you might have to admit what you're really trying to do. But if they have a whole thing in their head that, they think the government is like, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington with Jimmy Stewart, and it's all about fairness and truth, justice, and the American way, and no one would ever lie to you. Just let them keep thinking that, and just do what you want to do, because they can't deal with the truth anyway. They couldn't possibly wrap their heads around it. That's how people in power are thinking. So we're gonna see this in the United States, because there's this whole Russia scare, and really the whole Russiagate thing, the whole thing about the Russians are trying to meddle in our elections, that's a bunch of Cold War propaganda that's been dusted off to get the old farts all spun up. Because especially the children of the World War II generation, they tend to have really low self-esteem, that they weren't even born yet, so they couldn't fight in World War II. And especially the ones who were in the middle, where they were too young for Vietnam, they really have low self-esteem about not having fought in their own little great war. So they've been raised to look for opportunities to be the big American hero. So this dusted off, anti-Russian propaganda, they absolutely love it because it's comforting. They feel like they're children again, and the world is simple, and their parents are still here to, boss them around, and they can still idolize their World War II veteran parents. That's why the whole Russia thing's going on. Now, what was found in the UK was that both the Conservative and the Liberal Party were paying private contractors in Russia to help them create and disseminate misleading information. Well, the reason that, and this is what's going on in the United States too, is that Republicans and Democrats have paid private Russian contractors to do this. This isn't the Russian government. This isn't the Russian people. But the reason they're going to these Russian companies is because, you know, the Russians do amazing intelligence work. Them and the Chinese, they're the best in the world. The United States and Britain they're really fucking jokes. They're fools when it comes to intelligence work. There's some really talented people in the U.S. and Britain in the intelligence communities, but most of them stick out like sore thumbs and they're complete fools, and they can't do it. They don't know how, because we've never lived hard lives here. Our ancestors in Europe did. Our ancestors basically, most of them were serfs in Europe and they were slaves in their own countries. But, it's been a long time. During World War II, there were football games and 4th of July barbecues, and people were having, the population was having a pretty good time. In Russia, the population was slated for extermination by the Third Reich. So they've had some friggin' hard times. And that went on for centuries, ever since the Mongolians. They had like 1,000 years of always being invaded and occupied by someone. So they had to learn how to become good spies. So that's why the liberal and conservative parties, in the whole Western world, are going to these Russian contractors to help them create false news and to spread it, because they're great at this. And they got really good during the Soviet Union, which was funded by Wall Street. So I'll get into that in another video, but they were the best enemy that money could buy, so that society here could be changed, and so that the intelligence agencies like CIA and NSA, which were founded by the Nazis, could have something to do, and so that they could get more control over this country. So that's a very long discussion. So just look forward to more of that. And this is why we have the whole, Russiagate thing, because they're great at intelligence work. And since the fall of the Soviet Union, you have all of these out of work intelligence officers. So they went private sector, and they've been working. They've been doing this. They've been creating this false news from profit, from money, ever since the fall of the Soviet Union. And like I said, both parties, Republican and Democrat, Labor and Conservative, have been hiring them to create false news stories and to help them spread them. So that's one of the revelations that's going to come up following this solar eclipse, is that here in America, the Democrats had these Russians working for them too. Plus, all the Democratic leaders in Congress, all their children were all connected to companies making money in Ukraine, and they're profiting from it. So just wait for the revelations. They're coming. This whole system we have right now, this whole us versus them, and whatever side I'm on is always right. Our side is always right. It's going to come tumbling down. So, like I said before, we're living through a Ragnarok time. The twilight of the gods, the fall of the gods. So, people who think they're gods. So, that's been a mouthful. That's all I've got. So, if you want to see how this solar eclipse is going to affect you specifically, get a Vedic astrology reading with me. My website is thecosmicalchemist.com. These readings are basically a roadmap for the rest of your life. You can see how in 2021 and beyond, all these astrological alignments are going to affect you, and you're going to be able to get a better look at what your hidden gifts and talents are, so that you can navigate these transformative and really these kind of times of upheaval. I also do rune readings, which are more of, they're kind of mind maps. They're little snapshots in the moment, and they help you to see, what parts of your mind are blocked and are keeping you from living the life you want to be living. And I also have some Qigong videos on sale for download. Qigong is a great mind-body practice. It helps you to get in tune with your body, with your energy body, with the energy running through not only your physical body, but your being, and helps you to circulate it better and just basically defrag your hard drive, to get baggage out of your mind and just, think more clearly and just, be more psychically hygienic. So again, my site is thecosmicalchemist.com. Thanks very much for tuning in, and I'll talk to you later.